welcome to this retreat. Ajahn Brahm unfortunately had to do the Dhammaloka talk tonight, so I'm here instead. How many people from Singapore here? Is about half the crowd here? I recognize many of you. Okay, good. And the rest are mostly from Perth, presumably. Okay. So welcome, and I think it's a wonderful thing that we have this retreat center here, and people can come from overseas, from places like Singapore, where there's so much, things are so busy, and there's so much city, and there's so much noise, there's so much happening in Singapore all the time. It's such a busy place. So it's a wonderful thing that we can actually combine forces, and we can have a center in Perth, far away, where you can come and have some time away from the Singaporean busy life. It's a wonderful thing, because otherwise it's very hard to find that sort of place like this in Singapore, to say the least. So because of that, because this is a wonderful opportunity for you, I would recommend you to use this opportunity well. This is your chance to get that bit of a break, get a bit of time away from the life in Singapore, from the busyness. So use it well. Don't spend your time while you're here to think about your family and friends, or your job in Singapore, all the other things that you have to do. Try to leave all those things behind, and to come here, stay here, be in the present moment, enjoy yourself while you're here. Let go of all those things from the past. And if you can do that, then you will find that you actually start to enjoy the setting here at Jhana Grove a lot more than if you think about the things back home. And remember some of the wonderful guidance that the Buddha gave about how to let go of the past. He said that the past is gone. There's nothing you can do about that. The future hasn't arrived yet. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's all uncertain. There's no point in thinking about those things. And moreover, in addition to all of that, if you're able to use this retreat time well, you will find that when you eventually get back to Singapore again, you will have a sense of clarity, you have a sense of compassion and kindness, and you will actually be able to deal with all those things much better afterwards. If you spend your time here thinking about all those things back home, actually it's going to be detrimental to your ability to deal with those things afterwards. So make sure that you spend this time wisely. Let go of all of those things. Forget about all those things back home in the past or in the future. And allow yourself just to enjoy this Jhana Grove Retreat Center. And the way to enjoy a place like this is first of all to remember that it's a large property here. It's about 140 acres. And there's a great opportunity sometimes, particularly in the first few days, to use all of this property. Have a walk around, have a look at nature. This time of the year is one of the most beautiful times of the year in Western Australia. You see all the young animals coming out, the young kangaroos jumping around, jumping a bit wobbly, a bit this way, a bit that way, because not so used to jumping yet. They're still babies. It's always funny to watch. And then you also have all the other animals coming out, because it's springtime. You have all the lizards, you have all the birds, and also all the plant life is very beautiful at this time of the year. This is probably the most beautiful time of the year. Everything is green, everything is nice. The flowers are coming out. The rest of the year here is very dry, there's no greenery, but this time of the year it's still very nice. In a couple of weeks' time, it will start going brown already. So enjoy that. There's something beautiful about enjoying nature, which is not dangerous, which doesn't make you attached, which doesn't give rise to defilements. There's something purifying and calming about nature when you see it right. And also when you see all the little animals, sometimes it gives rise to a sense of joy inside of you, a sense of compassion and kindness. And all of these things can help you along the path, help you in practicing properly. And it's wonderful. It's one of the amazing things that you find in the suttas, in the word of the Buddha. You find sometimes the arahants, the people who are fully enlightened, they talk about the beauty of nature. So even the arahants talk about this. People who are fully enlightened. One of the famous ones is the arahant called Mahakassapa. He was supposed to be a very tough character. He would always wear rag robes. He would always live out in the forest somewhere. He was very, very tough, very ascetic, and he would tell off all the monks who weren't practicing properly. And he, in his verses, in the famous Theragata verses, which are the verses of the elders, of the arahants in those days, He praises nature. He says how wonderful it is to look around, to see the beautiful blue sky, the mountains, the birds soaring in the air, the large trees, the plants, all these things. How wonderful it is, how beautiful it is to see this. So even the arahants could delight in nature. And that shows you that it's not really usually a dangerous thing. It's usually a calming thing. It's usually a beautiful thing. And also what you will find is that if you go outside at this time of the day, you find the moon coming out. You see a beautiful moon out there, and you see the stars in the sky. These are things you are very difficult to see in Singapore because of all the light in Singapore. Here, everything becomes very clear and very bright and very beautiful. And again, you read in the suttas, and the Buddha always said that the full moon night, the night, and we're actually approaching the full moon night now, is coming up on Wednesday next week. That is the time when the moon is growing and becoming very bright. It's a very inspiring time. And you can find that for yourself. If you go out there and just feel the moonlight, feel the beauty of the stars in the sky, it actually feels very inspiring. It feels very powerful. It's like a sense of magic in the air when the moonlight comes out and you see all the shadows around. And it's a very wonderful time. So allow that to inspire you. And allow to feel good, to feel peaceful, and use these things to actually enhance and aid you in your meditation practice. And the other thing about this retreat center, this is not really a very strict center. You're allowed to do pretty much what you like here. So use the facilities. And particularly in the first couple of days, usually it's good just to relax, take it easy, and just enjoy yourself as much as you can. And just find yourself into a nice, easy routine in the first couple of days. If you try too hard in the beginning, you will find that you become tense and uptight. But what you really want to do in the first few days is to actually let go of all that tension, any kind of residual stress or whatever you may have from back home. This is the time to let go of all those things. So to do that, if you need to have a little bit of extra sleep during the day or in the morning, whatever, do that. This is the time to be at ease, to relax, to enjoy yourself, to have a good time, and not to stress yourself out in any way at all. And also, if you want to have an extra cup of tea, do that. If you want to go for a walk, again, go for a walk. If you want to read something, if you want to listen to a talk, all of those things are very innocent things to do. So please do those to feel at ease. It's so important to enjoy your meditation time, to enjoy your time here at Ajahn Brahm. If you don't enjoy yourself, everything is very counterproductive. And eventually you might give up all this meditation practice altogether because it isn't actually leading you in the right direction. So enjoy it. And also remember that when you, for all of you, particularly you who come from Singapore, I know in Singapore you haven't got much holiday here. And what a wonderful thing it is of you to take this time out from your busy schedule or the things that you have to do. Come all the way to Perth and actually take part in a meditation retreat rather than going to holiday in some exotic place or some wonderful hotel somewhere. You're actually coming here to do a meditation retreat, to do something good, something wholesome, something which improves yourself and also helps you improve the people around you. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. How many people in the world do this kind of thing? Almost nobody. That is why it is a great thing to do. And when you think like that, it inspires you. You feel good. You feel, yeah, I'm doing something really worthwhile. And that can also, again, inspire you in your meditation practice. It's one of those things in Buddhism. It's okay as a Buddhist to feel good about yourself. It's fine to be inspired if you do something right and you do something which is good. So please take these things into account and do feel good about yourself. A couple of kind of ground rules that I would recommend that you keep under this meditation retreat. And the one particularly that I would suggest that you do while you're here is to try to keep as quiet as you possibly can, particularly when you come into this hall. Try to be quiet in this hall. And the reason for that is simply that in a retreat situation like this, there are always some people here who always get good meditation while they're here. There's always some people who have a very bright mind, who go very deep in the meditation practice. And sometimes if you make a little bit too much noise, you can actually disturb those people. So think about it. Don't make it something oppressive, that you have to be quiet and it oppresses you. Think about it as a gift that you give to the people around you. I'm going to give you the gift of keeping as quiet as I can when I come into this hall. Treat the hall here like a sacred space, a place where silence and quiet is sacred, and it's a gift that you give to the people around you. And when you think about it like that, as a gift that you give to the people around you, it becomes something very beautiful and something very nice, and something which again enhances your meditation practice. It enhances your meditation because you are giving. It's an act of charity. You're doing something for somebody else. And that's why it becomes something beautiful. So that is maybe the one thing that I would try to recommend you to do while you're here, particularly in this hall. Be as quiet as you can. I know there was a lady last year who had very, very good meditation, and she was said she was a bit disturbed sometimes because people were being a little bit too noisy in this hall. So see if you can avoid that. That was a wonderful thing to do if you can. But what I want to talk about now is just a little bit about meditation itself, just to get you started about meditation. And the one thing, the kind of the pivotal point in meditation practice, the one point that we all try to sort of reach and get to, which is the pivot from where meditation tends to take off by itself, that pivot point is a point of mindfulness. This quality that you will see people talk about everywhere around the world. They write about this in journals. They have conferences about mindfulness, and everybody's into mindfulness these days, everywhere. But it is, in Buddhism, it is a very important quality, because if you get to the point where you have a sense of mindfulness, meditation tends to go almost automatically by itself. Once you are mindful, you can sit down, and because you are present, because you are here, if you turn your attention to the breath, then you will see the breath. It will be peaceful. It will be nice. It will be automatic. You don't have to use a lot of power, a lot of effort or anything like that. It's an automatic thing because you are already present. And then when you can automatically watch the breath, then the joy and happiness tends to arise as a consequence of that. And when the joy and happiness tends to arise, the whole process just unfolds by itself. So if you can get to this point of mindfulness, it's like the pivot point where meditation becomes much easier, much more automatic. It happens largely by itself, and things are actually much more joyful and happy from there on. So for that reason, I want to talk a little bit about how to get to this point of mindfulness, how we can actually, what we can do in our life to get there. And first of all, in case you don't know, mindfulness just means basically presence of mind. It means that you are here and now. You're not thinking about the past, the future. You're not fantasizing about anything here. But you're here. You're present in this moment, in this situation right now. And you know what's happening in this situation. That's basically what mindfulness is, presence of mind. And one of the things, one of the big kind of dangers with trying to become mindful is that we use willpower to try to be mindful. We say, right, okay, I'm going to be mindful, and then you force the mind to actually be in the present moment. And you can do that. You can do that to some extent. You can actually force the mind. If you say, okay, right, I'm going to be here, you can force yourself to do that. But of course, what happens if you use force to become mindful, you tend to become a little bit tense, a little bit uptight. You can't be at ease so much. You don't relax as much as you should be doing. And because of that, in the long run, it tends to be counterproductive. It doesn't tend to work. So force in mindfulness is always a very dangerous thing. And when you use force, that force that you're using is the same force that you use during your day at work or at home with your family. The force that you use to go through a day, to read a report or to whatever it is. And it is the same thing which tires you during the day will now tire you during your meditation practice. So even if you're able to stay mindful for a while through force, in the long run, it's going to tire you. In the long run, it's not going to work, and you're going to feel tired or restless because of that force in the long run. So the best thing to do is to try to avoid force. Of course, a little bit of will is sometimes happens regardless, but try as much as you can just to relax and be at ease. In that way, gradually, the mindfulness will start to actually arise in you. It comes all by itself. And I remember a few occasions in my monastic life. I remember one of my monastic friends many years ago, and he said that, it's so tiring to always have to be mindful. It's so exhausting. You always have to be on the ball. You always have to be there. And at the time, I was only a young monk. I didn't really understand what was going on. I thought, maybe he's practicing right. He's really being mindful by using force or whatever. But later on, I realized that what he was doing wasn't really so useful, because if you get tired by being mindful, it's not the right kind of mindfulness. The kind of mindfulness you want is the ease, the relaxedness, where the mind just naturally hangs out in the present moment. Not where you have to use force, you have to push yourself, but it's here naturally. This fellow monk, who actually disrobed a long time ago now, he was doing things which eventually would just lead to more tiredness, and then you have to use even more force because the mind is tired. When it's tired, it wants to wander off, it wants to go to sleep, and then they have to use more force. And it gets into this negative cycle where it just goes down and down and down. And that's why force doesn't really work. So it's much better to relax. And I remember another case that was very extreme in a sense. When I was in Singapore a few years ago, I was living in a house with a Malaysian man who was traveling from KL to Singapore every week, and he asked me some questions on meditation. And he told me that he had been on this meditation retreat once for 10 days, and he said it was the worst experience he had ever had in his entire life. And he said that it was so stressful, and he got so tense, and it was so unpleasant, the whole experience. And he never, ever in his whole life did he want to go on a meditation retreat again. And I said to him, well, maybe it's just you have to change your way of doing things. Maybe there's another way of doing this. Maybe there's other types of techniques you can use. But he had such a traumatic experience on meditation retreat that basically he didn't want to do it ever again. And that was obviously using too much force, not being relaxed, not enjoying himself, not having a good time. Force, power, all these things. So that is, again, it's the wrong way. It doesn't work. It leads to a state of mind which is more tired, which isn't relaxed, which doesn't have the joy and happiness that you require. So we need to look in another direction to understand how to give rise to mindfulness. And it's very interesting for me because I remember a few years ago, Ajahn Brahm was going off to the eastern states of Australia to a conference, and it was one of those conferences I mentioned before about mindfulness and all these things. And they had all these professors invited from the US that were going to talk about the latest experiments in mindfulness and show how good it was, the health benefits of mindfulness, and all these issues about mindfulness. And Ajahn Brahm was also a speaker over there. And when I looked at that list, they were talking about pretty much every aspect of mindfulness you can imagine, except for one thing, and that was, how do you actually become mindful? What is the cause for mindfulness? How do you actually do it? That wasn't mentioned at all. It was just talking about the benefits of these things and about all the science around it and all this other stuff, which of course is important. But to me, much more important is how you actually get there. Because without the guide map, without the roadmap to how to get there, it becomes pretty useless. That roadmap is so important. And that is the thing which sort of distinguishes Buddhism from many of this modern scientific inquiry, is that we actually have that roadmap. We have the suttas of the Buddha, and they give very clear instructions on the causes of mindfulness. What is it that makes you mindful? And I said to Ajahn Brahm, I would like to go along and give a talk on the causes of mindfulness, because that's missing in this conference. And of course, the reason it's missing is because they don't really understand the cause of mindfulness. To understand that, you have to go to the suttas of the Buddha and see what the Buddha said about these things. And the thing is that in Buddhism, everything is causal, everything is about cause and effect. Nothing stands alone like a thing which is just stands there by itself. Everything is causality. Causality is one of the foundational aspects of the Buddha's teachings. Everything can be understood in terms of cause and effect. And this is also true of mindfulness. So the thing, again, about mindfulness is that it is something which comes from causes, it comes from conditions, it comes from something else. It's not something which stands alone by itself. And that is, of course, if it did stand alone by itself, if it was something that was not caused or conditioned, it would be like a self. And in Buddhism, everything is just causality, one thing coming after the other. And the same thing is true of mindfulness. And there is two types of causes I want to talk about, two ways of looking at this causality. And one is what I would call the far-off cause for mindfulness, that which brings mindfulness in the long run for somebody who practices the Buddha's teachings. Another one is what I would call the immediate cause for mindfulness. And the immediate cause for mindfulness is a sort of thing that you can do on a retreat right here and right now. But first of all, just a little bit on the kind of far cause for mindfulness. And mindfulness is, in the suttas, it is one of these aspects on the path. And when you look at the path overall, the one thing which always comes before mindfulness is morality, virtue. It is the one thing which is always there before mindfulness. In other words, if you want to have mindfulness, the only way you can do that is if you live a virtuous and good life. And for all of you, it is something that you can maybe see now during your meditation here at Ajahn Brahm. Look at your mind and try to see the connection between the state of mind that you have here and the things, some of the things that you have done in the past. And sometimes when you look into the mind, you will see that sometimes you get joy or happiness coming up. And very often that will be connected, or sometimes it will be connected with a good act that you have done in the past. Sometimes you may feel a little bit more sad or a little bit more dark. And very often you will see that that is connected with a bad act, something you've done in the past, which maybe wasn't quite as good as it should be. So you will start to understand the causality of how you live your daily life, how that influences your ability to meditate when you come here to Ajahn Brahm. And of course, of those acts that you do at home, you're talking about particularly about speech and about actions. And the more you purify those speech and actions in your daily life, the more powerful your meditation will be whenever you go on a meditation retreat. And it's very obvious why that is when you think about it. The reason why that works is because when you live a good life, you basically feel good about yourself. You feel happiness. There's a natural sense of gladness, of lack of remorse inside of you. The more good actions you do, the less bad things you do, the more natural, the more easy, the more light, the more pure, the more bright, the more beautiful is your mind. It happens as a natural consequence. And you can see that. If you look carefully, you can see that happening inside of you. And then you start to understand the cause and effect between virtue and mindfulness. Virtue and being able to be in the present moment. When you feel good inside of you, you want to be here and now. Because when you feel good inside of you, it's happy to be in the present moment. You feel good about being in the present moment. If you don't feel good inside of you, if you feel sad about something or bad about something, then it is painful to be in the present moment. You don't want to be here. And because you don't want to be here, you will fantasize, you will think about the past, you will think about the future, and you don't really want to be here and now. So it's very obvious how this works. Virtue and meditation, morality and meditation always goes together. And one aspect of virtue that you also need to take into account as a Buddhist is what we call mental virtue, the virtue of the mind. And that relates first and foremost, of course, to avoiding anger as far as possible, because anger is this big demon which takes away so much happiness from us and causes us so much trouble in life. And again, you will find that your mind becomes much brighter if you're able to move away from those negative mental states and move towards more positive ones. Again, this is also part and parcel of the Buddhist practice. This comes under, if you like, loving kindness meditation and compassion meditation. And when you do that in your daily life, you will see how all this builds up under the mindfulness. And when you come here, Next year, you will see that your mind is much brighter. It has changed. Something has actually happened because you have been practicing rightly. Gradually, 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 things move in the right direction. It's a very powerful thing when you see that. It actually works. It's not easy. All of these things, all things which you do where you have to change, where you have to become better, you have become more pure, always difficult to do. It's never easy to change, but it's very, very, very worthwhile. I would say it's the only really worthwhile thing to do in life. Everything else is just superficial, not going to get you anywhere. This is where something really inside of you is happening, something really worthwhile, where you are actually changing. You're building up a better person, a more powerful person, a better heart, more compassionate, more caring, more mindful, and you feel so much better about yourself, and the people around you also feel so much better in your presence. It's a wonderful thing to do. For me, it's really the only worthwhile thing to do in one's whole life. So that is the far-off cause. And reflect on that during this retreat, because you will come to get a better understanding of the Buddhist path and about how meditation is fueled by other causes. Now, the nearer what you can do on the retreat here and now to establish mindfulness, the first thing that I was mentioning before is to make sure that you just learn to relax, to take it easy, to enjoy yourself, not to push yourself, and allow the mind to find peace all by itself. Most of you come from very busy lives, and because you come from busy lives, it is likely that your mind is either restless, so you think a lot, or if it's not restless, it is very likely to be a bit tired. I can see somebody yawning a bit here, which is good, which is perfectly fine. And that is good. Allow yourself to be tired. Allow yourself to be restless. Don't fight these things. Allow them to be. The reason you're tired is because you're moving from a very active lifestyle to a much more settled one. So allow those things to be. Don't fight them. This is really so important, particularly at the beginning of the retreat like this. And sometimes people become very competitive, and this is the last thing you want to be on the retreat. Don't compete with your neighbor. Don't think that you have to sit as long as the person next to you or as short. This has got nothing to do with the people around you. It's got to do with you. It's got to do with you and your defilements and your mind and how you can develop. And it's nothing to do at all with being better or worse than anybody else. It's your life, and it is your movement towards greater purity that this is about, not about competition. So we have to get out from that worldly state of mind where we are competing with somebody. This has nothing to do with competition whatsoever. You can sleep for the whole 9 days, and maybe that's okay for you. Maybe that's the right thing for you to do. And if you do, you don't have to compare yourself to anybody else, even if they sit here 24 hours a day for 7 days. You have to do your own practice and practice for yourself. And the way, this is the nice thing about the way the Buddha talks about this in the suttas. Sometimes we think about our practice, we say, okay, have I attained the first jhana, the second jhana? Have I got insight into nama-rupa paricheda jnana and all these kind of things? And Buddhism is often divided up and subdivided into all these kind of categories and all these kind of things. And Buddhism is divided up into all these insights and all these samadhi things, and sometimes we think that to be able to actually practice properly, we have to attain some of these things. But don't look at attainments. The Buddha never said that, if that there is like a kind of competition for attaining this or attaining that. What the Buddha said, rather than looking at your attainments, there's only one thing that you should look at in your meditation practice and in your spiritual practice more generally. And that is if you are improving, if you are going in the right direction. Are you becoming more peaceful? Are you becoming more kind? Are you becoming more compassionate? Are you becoming more blissful? Are you finding some happiness in your meditation? Are you improving? Are you becoming less angry? Are you becoming less restless? That is what you should look for, both in the long run and also in the short run while you're on a retreat like this. That is what matters, because then you are moving in the right direction. It's not about having one deep meditation experience and never having it again. That is pointless. That's not the point. The point is in gradually going in the right direction, because if you do that, you know that eventually you will get to the destination that all Buddhists are aiming for. If you don't, if you just have like one blip but the rest is flat, you're not going anywhere. You're never going to get to the destination with only one blip like that. So look at whether you are improving. That is what matters. To me, this is such a powerful teaching, and it is found many, many places in the suttas. And the Buddha said we can use this in our lives all the time to ask ourselves, whatever we do, whether it's going on the retreat, whether it's in our daily life, does this that I want to do, is it going to lead to me improving, getting more good states, wholesome states, more happiness, more peace? Or is it going to lead to deterioration, to worse states, to bad states, to becoming more angry, depressed, or restless, or whatever? If it is getting to worse states, I should not do that. If it leads to better states, that is what I should do. And everything in life can be basically taken down to that formula. If it leads to something positive and good, it's the right thing to do. If it leads to something which is negative, to a decline in your spiritual practice, then it is not right. It's a wonderful thing. It's a very profound teaching. It's not about what you gain. It's about whether you are going in the right direction. So think about that during this retreat. Are you moving in the right direction or not? I use this thing all the time in my monastic life. I ask myself, should I have Ajahn Brahm as my teacher? Should I stay at Bodhinyana monastery? Should I eat this kind of food? I always use this a lot to sort of help me guide myself. Should I read the suttas? Should I come here and give a talk or not? If I think it's going to lead to something good for myself, in a sense of improving my spiritual qualities, then I will try to do it. If not, I will try to avoid it. It's not foolproof. Sometimes you make mistakes, but it gives you a very good guidance. So this is what you should look at while you're here on retreat. See how you're going. And if you feel that you're becoming gradually more peaceful, you're moving in the right direction, you know that you're doing the right thing. If you find that you're becoming tense or restless, it isn't working for you, then you need to change. Then take an interview with Ajahn Brahm and say, I'm feeling tense, what should I do? And he will say, go for a walk in the forest or whatever. And then you do something else to get away from that. So monitor yourself, look at yourself, know what you're doing. Don't be a slave to a routine, don't be a slave to a particular way of doing things. Look at your mind and see what's happening inside of you. Then you know whether or not you're going in the right direction. So this is the first thing to look at. So this is like the first trick. Relax, be at ease, enjoy yourself, and make sure that you are moving in the right direction. Another way of looking at this way of becoming mindful, which I often like to talk about, is to understand the Buddhist idea of the middle way. Because the middle way can be used also in meditation practice. And just to remind you, in Buddhism you have the two extremes, and one extreme is the indulgence of the five senses, whatever indulgence that is. And the other extreme is like mortifying the body, making the body painful by torturing yourself, by sitting too long, by having aching knees or whatever. That's the torture, the self-mortification. Now these, the Buddha said, are the two extremes. So what you can do is when you're on retreat, reflect that what you really want to do is you don't want to indulge so much that the body is something that is important to you. If you indulge a lot, if you indulge too much, it's actually very difficult to indulge too much even jhana growth because you're so far away from your normal indulgences. But if you do indulge too much in life, you find that the body and the five senses become very important to you. The five senses become important because you get satisfaction and happiness through those five senses. So they are important. In exactly the same way, if you have a lot of pain in the body and you do what we might call self-mortification practice, you sit there for hours with a lot of pain or whatever, again, the body, the five senses become important because the mind wants to get rid of the pain. So again, it's a problem because the senses become important because of the pain. So as long as you go to either of these extremes, the five senses are important. You will be involved in the world of the five senses. You will be interested in taste, in sights, in the comfort of the body, all these kind of things. But if Instead, you find that middle way where you don't indulge, nor do you practice self-mortification, but you find that path in the middle between those two. Then what happens is that the five senses are not important anymore. They diminish because you are neither experiencing happiness through them, nor are you experiencing pain through them. And when there's neither happiness nor pain there, they tend to disappear. They tend to become unimportant. And that's why this middle path is so beautiful, because when the five senses are not important, then also the desire connected with those five senses, all the thinking about them, all the negativity, aversion connected with the five senses, that too disappears. And when that decides to disappear, mindfulness starts to come in its place. Because this is what sense restraint is basically about. Sense restraint is about not having that desire and aversion, that interest and aversion through the five senses. And sense restraint is equivalent to mindfulness arising. So try, if you can, to find that middle way. Don't indulge too much, nor have too much pain in the body in your meditation. If it gets too painful, then change your posture. Use a chair, do whatever, go for a walk or whatever. But don't allow yourself to be in too much pain. And then, hopefully, that will be another beautiful way of actually finding that balance and allowing mindfulness slowly to arise. I also say that if you have any doubts about whether you are being too strict with yourself and you have too much pain, or whether you have too much indulgence, it's better to err on the side of indulgence. Rather have a little bit too much indulgence rather than having too much pain and too much ascetic practices. Because too much indulgence, at the very least, all that happens is you feel maybe a little bit dull or you drift off a little bit. Nothing very severe is going to happen. But if you have too much pain, you might get put off meditation practice in a much more serious kind of way. So do that and see what happens. The last thing I want to mention about how to help you to bring your mind into the present moment and to be mindful here and now is to also spend some time during this retreat and do a little bit of metta and loving kindness practice. It's such a powerful way of bringing the mind into the moment. It's very important on a meditation retreat like this. And there are many reasons why it's important, but it's particularly important because with a group like this, you're living quite close together, even though you have individual rooms, which is a very great luxury for compared to most meditation retreats. But still, when you are together with a large group like this, it's very easy to irritate each other a little bit and to get a little bit upset about this and that. And then to do a little bit of metta, a little bit of loving kindness towards each other helps you so much in stopping that stupid mind, which always tends to find fault and always be negative about things. And actually you can appreciate your fellow meditators rather than being negative about them. So try every day to do at least a few minutes of metta practice. Remind yourself of all the good people who are here with you. Remind yourself how wonderful it is that people are willing to give up their time to come to a meditation retreat and just be here practicing 8 precepts, doing what is good, trying to become better people. How amazing it is to be in a group of 60 people like that, and how difficult it is to find such people in the world. And even if they do something stupid or irritating, it's irrelevant compared to the goodness of the heart that is coming from these kind of people. And the more you dwell on the positive, the more you see the goodness, the more you see the positive qualities, the less likely you are to find fault and to get irritated by small and really irrelevant things. So make sure that you do that. And just remember that metta, what is metta? What is loving kindness? And loving kindness is just that. It's just the focusing on the good qualities in people around you rather than seeing the negative qualities. That's really all it is. And the only way that you can have a sense of metta is by focusing on the good qualities. If you have a very negative view or idea of another person, it's impossible to have metta towards that person. You have to be able to see the good qualities in people. So if you do your metta meditation, the most important thing for you to do is to bring, first of all, to mind somebody you have a very positive perception about, somebody who you see wonderful qualities in, somebody who you don't really have any negative perceptions about. That can be anybody who inspires you. Maybe for some of you might be Ajahn Brahm. For some of you it might be an uncle or an aunt that were very kind to you when you were a child, or maybe a grandparent or something like that. For some of you it might be maybe a completely different spiritual teacher. For some of you it can be anybody basically, but somebody where you see the good qualities more than anything else. And then you can also polish up that meditation object by reminding yourself, thinking about the good qualities of this person and reminding yourself of them. And then when you start to feel inside of you this good feeling, when you actually, it's always very nice when you see the good qualities in somebody else. It feels very good inside. That is when you can allow metta to arise and you can wish them well. And remember that when you wish somebody well in your metta practice, you say to yourself, may you be well. The most important thing is that you really mean that. It comes from your heart. You really, really want that other person to be happy. And when it comes from your heart, and it is that has that beautiful quality coming together with it, then it is so powerful, and it usually gives rise to a very nice feeling inside of you. So try to do that every day, and you will find, if you can do that, if you can help yourself to develop a little bit of metta every day, mindfulness will also become much, much more powerful during this meditation retreat. Metta is a guaranteed way of getting strong mindfulness. It says in the suttas that for a person who has real metta, the meditation is so easy. Samadhi comes automatically if you have real metta. And also, it stops you from the fault-finding mind of the people around you. So have metta for everybody here. But start off with a person who it's easy to do it with. You can also, as it explains in the sutta, sometimes in the suttas it is said that you don't really have to have metta towards a particular person. You can just have metta for a certain direction. You think of everybody to the east of here or to the west of here, all the people out there, all the animals out there. And you think about how vulnerable all those people are, how much suffering they have in their life, and how everybody wants to be happy. Or about the kangaroos in the forest who are so vulnerable to the cold and to the heat and to the rain or whatever. They also want to be happy. They want to be free of suffering. But there's so little they can do about it. They have to live a life in pain, even though they're very cute and furry. And still they have to live this life of pain out there in the wild. It's very difficult to live in the wild. And when you bring up perceptions like that, you can have a sense of kindness and compassion towards all these creatures, whether humans or animals. And again, you wish them all well. Sometimes if you think about all the people in the western direction, the beautiful thing about not thinking about anybody specific is that you can just make up something in your mind, something which is not, if it is a specific person, it's always possible to find fault. If it's somebody completely made up, you can make a person which fits your idea of compassion perfectly. All the people in the West, all those people who are suffering, vulnerable to all the ups and downs in the world. We all know everybody's vulnerable to the ups and downs in the world. Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to have compassion and kindness in their heart. Everybody knows that if you are kind, you will be happy. And yet, it is so difficult sometimes to be kind. It's so hard to practice the right way. All those people, may they be happy out there. May they find that freedom from suffering in their life. So that is just a few ideas about how to develop your meditation while you're here. But the most important thing is that you just enjoy yourself. You have a good time and make sure that you relax and have it easy. The first few days are important just to relax, get into the routine and just allow your mind to brighten up all by itself. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I think that's plenty here. Do anybody want to ask any questions maybe at this stage? Anybody want to say anything here? Is everybody happy here? Have you all, everybody, you got all you require in terms of room? Dana's looking after you. I'm sure she's looking after you very well here. So, yeah. Ajahn Brahm will be coming in tomorrow morning, so you get your first Dhamma talk at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning here. So if you don't get up before that, I'll recommend you to get up at least for that one. It's always good fun. So, anything anybody want to ask before we call it an evening? Everybody happy? Okay, so let's call it a day. Let's just bow to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha first of all.